When HR called me into the office, they chose the smaller conference room. The one with the frosted glass walls and the fake plant in the corner that never seemed to get cleaned. That was the first thing I noticed. They read from a printed document, using terms like restructuring and organizational realignment. The CEO sat beside them with his jacket off and sleeves pushed halfway up his forearms, as though he had personally carried the weight of the decision. "You're fired. Return all company property." He didn't make eye contact when he said it. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, intertwined his fingers across his stomach, and added with almost casual indifference, "You're replaceable." For weeks, I had already rehearsed anger in my mind. The late-night contract revisions. The budget approvals that suddenly began getting delayed. The quiet reassignment of employees who had once reported directly to me. I knew this meeting was inevitable. Yet when it finally happened, I felt strangely calm. I set my laptop on the table. Then my badge. Then my access card. After that, I reached into my coat pocket and placed 12 small brass keys on the table. They landed with a heavier sound than I expected, a brief metallic clatter across the polished wood surface. HR stopped speaking in the middle of a sentence. The CEO glanced at the keys for only a moment. He interpreted them as symbolism, a theatrical gesture from someone trying to preserve his dignity. A smirk crossed his face. "Security will escort you out," he said. I simply nodded. No speech. No explanation of what those keys actually unlocked. If he didn't know, that alone told me something. Inside the elevator, the first wave of something resembling grief finally hit me. Not grief over the job. Grief over the years. Over the trust one had extended in good faith. For 7 years, I had built the operational infrastructure behind the company's expansion into secondary locations. Warehouses. Overflow office facilities. Secure storage spaces housing proprietary hardware. None of it was glamorous. All of it was essential. Most of the agreements had been structured around personal authorization. I was the designated signatory. I negotiated directly with landlords who preferred dealing with one familiar person instead of a revolving cast of executives. It wasn't about power. It was about continuity. And continuity remains invisible until the moment it disappears. 47 minutes after I left the building, my phone rang. The CEO. I allowed it to ring twice before answering. "What did you do?" he asked immediately, skipping any greeting. At first, I said nothing. Silence has a way of making people reveal more than they intend. "There's an eviction notice posted at the North Side facility," he continued. "The landlord says access has been suspended pending contract review. Our equipment is inside." The North Side facility housed 3 months' worth of backup inventory, and the company's only calibrated testing unit for a client launch scheduled the following week. "I didn't do anything," I replied. "My termination voided my personal authorization. The landlord's agreements require the original signatory to approve temporary transfer of access. That's ridiculous. We own the lease." "You lease the space," I corrected calmly. "The operational rider is attached to me as facilities director. It requires continuity through my authorization." On the other end, I heard movement. A door closing. His voice lowered. "Fix it." There it was. Not anger anymore. Urgency. "I can't," I said. "I no longer represent the company." The silence that followed lasted longer than any shouted argument ever could. By mid-afternoon, an email arrived from the chair of the board requesting a meeting. Not from the CEO. From the board. The balance of authority had shifted without anyone formally announcing it. When we met virtually, on neutral ground, the chair didn't ask what I had done. She asked what had been overlooked. Calmly, I explained the decentralized structure. The relationship-based agreements. The clauses that had been created for stability rather than control. I forwarded every document. Nothing concealed. Nothing weaponized. Just consequences. The CEO wasn't aware of the authorization dependency, she said. I documented it in quarterly reports, I replied. Continuity was considered low risk because I wasn't considered a risk. That statement landed. The conversation contained no drama. No threats. Just an uncomfortable realization that corporate terms like replaceable sound efficient only until the systems themselves disagree. The board asked what would be necessary to restore temporary access. I didn't exaggerate my importance. I didn't ask for apologies. Instead, I presented two options. I could return as a short-term independent consultant, properly transfer authorization, and train a successor over 60 days. Or they could wait for a full legal review and renegotiate every agreement individually with each landlord. Estimated delay: 8 to 12 weeks. Again, silence. Not hostile. Analytical. We'll send a proposal, the chair finally said. That evening, the CEO called once more. The sharp edge in his voice was gone. You could have warned us. I thought about that, I said. 4 months, I tried. Warnings don't accomplish much when they come from someone considered replaceable. He didn't answer right away. I misjudged the dependencies, he admitted at last. It wasn't quite an apology. But it was closer than I expected. I'm not interested in proving you wrong, I told him. I'm interested in being accurate. That ended the call. The following morning, I signed a consulting agreement. Higher rate. Clearly defined scope. Formal transfer of authority. No corner office. No restored title. Just professional boundaries. When I returned to the north side facility alongside the landlord, the eviction notice was removed while I stood there. The calibrated testing unit was inspected. Access was reinstated. No applause. No spectacle. Inside the company, however, subtle changes began to spread. The board launched a review of executive termination procedures connected to operational continuity. For the first time, the phrase key person dependency appeared in internal memoranda. The CEO stopped using the word replaceable during meetings. I know because a former colleague told me. I never requested a public correction. There was no need. People tend to imagine power reversals as loud events. They picture humiliation. Dramatic apologies. Public confrontations. In reality, it felt administrative. Paperwork updated. Authority clarified. Systems brought back into balance. I didn't win anything. And I didn't destroy anything either. 63 days later, I left after properly transferring every authorization. I trained my replacement, a capable operations manager, who listened carefully as I explained the structure. On my final day as a consultant, I handed over a single master key. The document was signed. No smirk this time. As I walked out, there was no security escort. No tension. Only an understanding that resilience doesn't require a spectacle. Sometimes it's simply refusing to argue when you already know the structure will speak on your behalf.